go, oh, this is my fault. This isn't them. This is me. And when I became a better leader, then all of a sudden they wanted to be good and they became good too.
The future of dentistry belongs to the innovators. Welcome to Innovation in Dentistry. I'm your host, Sean Zayas, and I believe that the future of dentistry is going to be unbelievably great over the next decade and 2 decades. But the question isn't that. The question is, are you going to be part of what makes dentistry great? Okay, so today is super exciting because I have the honor of interviewing my dear friend, Dr. Allison House. Um, I am in dentistry right now still because of this woman. It was like 5 years ago where I was switching companies and I needed like a reason to still care about what was happening in dentistry. And I was getting so disillusioned. And then I met you, and at that time, you were the president of the Arizona Dental Association, and you just gave me like such an inspiration to be like, wow, like dentists are awesome, they rock. So this is awesome that I get to interview you for Innovation in Dentistry. So thank you for joining me, Dr. House.
Well, thank you. I'm so honored that you asked me. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. So right off the bat, like I'm so curious. Like I know so much about your story, but I don't know if everybody does. My main thing here, it's not about clinical innovation. It's not about technological innovation. It's about what is it that gets a dental professional to feel empowered to pioneer positive change and maybe step outside the op and say, hey, dentistry is great. Like dentistry is enough. It's more than enough if you're just a dentist. But for you, like it wasn't. You've done a lot of things legislatively, including, like I just mentioned, being the president of the Arizona Dental Association. And even now, you're on the council in practice at the ADA.
Actually, I finished my term. I
Oh,
did my
okay.
4-year term at the Council for Dental Practice at the ADA. It was amazing. And yeah, I could go on and on about that experience.
So I want to know, what is it about? Like, when did you know that there was more for you aside from just like being a clinical dentist?
So when I graduated from dental school, I should back up. I had 2 children in dental school, which means that my dental school experience was stressful. In fact, that's like putting it mildly. It was really stressful and for my own doing, my own fault. So when I graduated, I did not feel totally prepared to be a dentist. But, you have that moment where like, I'm a dentist, I'm out there, I got a job, we moved here to Arizona. And the first 2 years I worked in 7 practices that were all owned by someone other than a dentist. And I couldn't figure out why this was so terrible. I mean, it just felt terrible. I was asked to do things that felt unprofessional. And yet you sort of had this thing in the back of your mind where like, well, maybe this is the real world. Maybe dental school was an ivory tower and this is the reality. But it didn't feel good. And I got fired from 2 of them, which I'd never been fired from a job my whole life. I got every job that I ever asked for. That was that was awful. So I started my own practice after all of this nightmare. And I wrote a letter to the board of trustees at the Arizona Dental Association. And I'm 26, 27 years old at this time. So I don't really know how this works. But I write them a letter and I just tell them, I'm worried about the state of dentistry. I think that this is all bad. I'm not sure. And I listed all the things that had happened to me, put it in an envelope, mailed it. No email, mailed it. And I don't know, maybe 3 months later, somebody reached out to me and said, we're really concerned too. And we had no idea this was going on. So that was the first time.
But it took 3 months for a response.
It did take 3 months for a response. But I mean, there's a lot of bureaucracy.
Yep.
And at that time, there were probably more because I don't know how many letters they got. The email wasn't quite a thing. This is a long time ago. I had paper charts. It was a long time ago. But that was the first time I felt like, oh, there is a voice and I have a perspective that's unique. And I didn't realize how unique it was because I was a young female dentist. I had 2 small children. My world was just different than the people that were running the Arizona Dental Association. So I got invited to be part of the new dentist committee, and then we wrote some legislation about people who own a practice that are not dentists, because that was the biggest issue is my license was on the line, and yet I had no control over what was happening in that practice.
So wait, this is like, so 2 years in, you write the letter, you get invited to be on the committee. And when you're starting to all of a sudden be part of legislating, is that like, has another year gone by? Are we talking about this is like year 2, year 3?
So I wrote the letter at year 2. I started my practice shortly after my own practice, and that was its own set of challenges. So they asked me, I think, in 2004 to be part of the new dentist committee because I had that voice, and I got to, and that was really fun. I wrote a CE called "The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly" that kind of detailed all the bad things that had happened to me, and asked for advice. I got a panel of 3. It's funny, I call them senior dentists now. They were probably in their 40s. 3 senior dentists, and I just asked them questions, and they were amazing because they told me, "Allison, you're being too hard on yourself," or they gave me great advice. And so that continues today, that good, bad, and the ugly. They do that a couple times a year.
But you just got thrust into like stepping up and leading. Like it wasn't part of your plan when you're what, Birmingham, Alabama? Is that when you were in dental school?
That was not part of my plan. Really, I just wanted to survive. I should back up though. My parents are big leaders. My mom was part of the Physical Therapy Association, and she and a group of other people wrote the exam for physical therapists across the country to be licensed. She was part of the federation. So my parents were involved in organized physical therapy. So it was probably in me. I just didn't know it.
So I mean, if we fast forward, it's like I mean, you and I started our own podcast. What was that?
2019.
Oh, so like 4 years ago.
It's been 4 years.
That's crazy. With the Authentic Dentist. And again, we named it that because that's who you are. You stand for everything that's authentic about like the way I feel like a dentist should be. Like you're honest. You care about your patients. There's no pretense. And that's what I kept running into with dentists was like this super thick layer of like an ego. And I couldn't find out what was real, because everyone was just doing great. Everyone was crushing it.
And I think we're taught that in dental school, and they call it professionalism. You put on the white coat, and that's your professional. But then, like, there's 2 people. There was one at home, and then there was one professionally, and that just doesn't work emotionally. At some point, you've gotta be the same person everywhere you go. And I discovered that I just needed to be me everywhere, in the operatory, at home, and that means moving my professionalism up at home and moving my professionalism into a more relatable person. And of course, I'm still behave myself in a professional manner at the office, but I still think people need to know I'm human and that I understand them.
But I'm just like, so back, you podcast, you're a published author, you lecture, you speak, about ethics nationwide, and then you just finished your time with the ADA. Like there's so many things that you've been involved in just outside again of being an amazing clinical dentist. Like what are some of the struggles along the way that you encountered? Like, did you have that imposter syndrome or that self-doubt?
Of course, I got fired twice, and that was devastating. One of the times I got fired because I stood up for myself and for the patient and said I wouldn't do something that I thought was unethical, and I got fired for it. And my husband was not amused because we had a mortgage and 2 kids and student debt. It was bad. It was really bad. So yeah, there's been lots of struggles, but I think my takeaway from all of the struggles have been, yes, but I have a voice. And it isn't just me. That took me a while to figure out that these struggles that I'm dealing with, they're not just me. Lots of people have, not everybody, but all of us have struggles, and that's just part of life. And I wanted to have a voice. And that opportunity to change the law here in Arizona so that non-dentist owners would be responsible for what happened in the office, I thought that was good. I mean, so I wanted to continue using my voice.
Now, that's come up like 3 times now already, and I think knowing that I've known you for as long as I have, because even before we were podcasting, you'd let me pick your brain about different business ideas, and I so appreciated your perspective. But you keep saying I had a voice. I got to use my voice. Like, I wonder if even in the next decade, you're going to be able to do something where you lead in such a way that you help others find their voice. Like I feel like if there was a book in you, which there are many, and you already have one out there, like I could see that platform where you're empowering people to find their voice because you found your voice pretty early. And I'm sure in navigating, what's been the challenges in navigating, I guess, what your voice has been?
I mean, there's always people that don't like it. There's always the haters. And I don't like criticism, just like all dentists. I don't like criticism. I was criticized enough in dental school, but that's something you just kind of have to take that not everybody's going to agree with you. And also that you're not always right. I think something needs to change, but when I bring it up, like at the Council for Dental Practice, the group is like, yeah, but here's what happens if we change that. Like, oh, I mean, I didn't see that that would be a problem. So yeah, it's been a learning curve for me to use that voice in the way I want to. But absolutely, I think my goal in life is that I want everyone to be able to speak out and I want dentistry to be great. And that means we have to collectively work together.
So I see you as someone that leads, as someone that pioneers. Is that an identity that you have where you've always seen yourself that way?
I guess I have, yes. I have a strange background where my father was an Olympic weightlifting coach, in addition to being a physical therapist. And so I started lifting weights when I was 6 years old. And this is a time when girls didn't lift weights. There was a concern that you might get too muscular, which you can't do because I don't have enough testosterone to get muscular. But I mean, I lifted in the American Open when I was 21 years old of Olympic weightlifting. My undergrad is in math. Yeah, I've done a lot of things that women typically didn't do back then. So that kind of makes me a pioneer. I don't know. I had 2 kids in dental school. Nobody'd ever done that before. So some of it's my own doing and some of it's, I just got pushed that way.
So do you feel like you didn't necessarily fit in with like the conventional dentist being that you had this unique perspective because of your background?
I didn't realize it until much later. I just assumed that everyone was like me. And actually, being a woman dentist, I didn't even notice that that was a big deal until I had started practicing. I mean, I knew that there weren't a lot of women in my class, but my class was amazing. They were so supportive of these 2 kids I had. There were 60 people in my class. I would say every person in my class held that baby for me. They did. And most of them had never held a baby before. And these are all men in their early 20s that are holding a baby so I can go wax something up or I can do an injection. I mean, that was an amazing support system. So I didn't realize that like the whole world wasn't like that.
I'm just trying to understand what that time in your life actually looked like. You're probably newly married. Like, not like
Not really.
no,
um, yeah, I got married very, very young.
but relatively, like you're still in your first like what, 5 to 7 years of marriage?
Yes, yes.
You have babies, which there's no manual for. And then you're doing, from what I understand, is incredibly challenging. Like dental school, what I hear the stories is like it tries to get rid of people.
I don't know if it tries, but it was very challenging. My husband was in law school in Atlanta I had a baby while he was in law school in Atlanta and I was in dental school in Birmingham, which is probably why I had so much support from my class. Law school is nothing like dental school. I mean, he was just flabbergasted at how much easier law school is than dental school. It's a challenging curriculum.
So what came out of that season of your life, um, whether it was identity wise or mindset wise, that was like a gift that you got, like maybe that you weren't expecting?
I actually wrote this letter to my son recently. He told somebody that he was a mistake that I'd had. And I was like, that's not true at all.
Wait, and you'd never heard him say this before?
I never heard him say that before. And I was devastated by this. So I wrote them this note and I said, you weren't a mistake. You were an incredible gift that I was given at a time when I didn't know that I needed that gift. And the gift was that I had to overcome challenges that I had never dreamed. I had to ask for help. And many of us are not the sort of people that ask for help. I pushed through, I figured out a way all by myself. And at that moment, I had no choice. I had to ask for help. And I asked for a lot of help and people gave it freely. My husband's grandmother came and lived with me for 6 weeks because Mark was still in Atlanta after JD was born. And it was 6 weeks before he could come over. So she lived with me for 6 weeks and helped me take care of this baby. My classmates came and picked me up because I had a C-section. I wasn't allowed to drive.
Oh my gosh.
They brought me dinner. And again, these are young men in their early 20s. Somebody brought me dinner for 60 days. I mean, it was amazing. I asked for help and I received it. And that's when I learned that community was important. That was a gift, huge gift.
Well, I was going to say, I feel like you've taken that with you through every single season where you've known how to, I don't want to say like rely on, but like use the support system that you have and continue to build out a community. And I think where I've seen most dentists go wrong is where they get isolated.
And it is, dentistry is so isolating. You know, patients, we work in this office where we're the leader, the owner, and then everyone around us is not a dentist. Sometimes you work with another dentist, but you're not like sitting next to that dentist. It's not like a neurosurgery where there's another surgeon in the operatory with you. You're alone. And so we sort of just build these walls where it's just all about you. And I needed a community and I knew that it was possible. And I knew that if you asked, people want to help. And that was a gift.
So you were the youngest to be the president of the Arizona Dental Association. I don't know if that's at the time or still, but
I think it's still.
okay. So that doesn't happen by accident. You find a voice, you're on a committee, and you start liking the fact that you know you can enact change.
I can't always keep my big mouth shut. So I got invited to be part of the delegation for the Arizona Dental Association. We have a House of Delegates. And we were supposed to approve a budget. And the budget that they handed us, and maybe this is 2011, 2010, was ridiculous. I mean, it had like a budget of, it said staff. And that was one of the line items. And then it was like Western Regional. That was a line item. It wasn't the Western Regional then. That is not a budget. So I stood up and said, I think we need some more detail before we can approve this budget. And they crucified me. I mean, the people up there were like, well, we'll have to have a special meeting if you want more detail, and it's going to cost another $10,000. And so, no, you can't have this. Well, I mean, I have an undergrad in math. I know that this is not okay. I know it's not okay. And I just couldn't let it go. So we passed the budget because of all those reasons. But somebody called me about a week later and said, hey, you want to be the treasurer? So I got nominated and became the treasurer in like 2012 on the Arizona board, not the central board at the state level. And yeah, so I jumped over a bunch of things in order to fix that budget, which was a disaster. And I had a lot of help along the way too. I had lots of people that knew about budgets. There were so many dentists that I called that helped me. But yeah, I got to make that change.
So at this point in time, I feel like you're kind of on the fast track. Like there's a reason why you ended up at the ADA on the council, because you kind of had this ambition of how can I go from Arizona Dental Association type leadership, type change and impact to national ADA impact. Where did your dream shift or change?
I mean, so you learn that there are things you can do on the local level in Phoenix. There are things you can do at the state level. And then there's things that cannot be done except at the federal level. So I knew that I wanted to impact change in lots of different ways. And so that's why I kind of went up the ranks. I was the president of Arizona in 2015, and I got things done. There were things I wanted to accomplish, and I did, but some things I wanted to accomplish, I couldn't because it was a federal issue. So I was on the delegation at the American Dental Association, and I was asked to be on this council for dental practice. That was incredible. It was a 4-year term, and that's when you start to affect the entire country. And again, it was interesting because I'd say, well, we need to do this. And they'd be like, that's a state issue. So frustrating.
I was just at the state. Now I'm here.
So yeah, there's all this bureaucracy, and it's just the way it is. I mean, this is just politics. So there are things you can get done. And then there's things you're like, no, we need to do at the federal level. You come back to the state. No, we can't do that here. So you're stuck. So that's when I talked to you and we started thinking, well, we'll just affect change. And so we did that podcast, and I love our podcast because I do think That's part of how you affect change, is that you have to get collaboration. Everyone in the dental community needs to say, hey, this needs to change. It's not going to be just 17 of us up at the ADA making a change.
I love that because that just empowers, that's a message that empowers everybody instead of simply the people that are delegated to lead. It's like, well, no, everyone has a role to play. Everyone has a voice and a contribution. And I don't know. It's so neat to see the way that I feel like you've been true to yourself in following the opportunities as they present themselves and then not shirking back. Like, at what point were you, I don't know, tell me about a story where there was some self-doubt and how you overcame that.
Oh my goodness, there are so many. I think one of the first ones was my first malpractice issue. Um, I I think it was maybe 11 years ago, and I seated a crown. I seated 2 crowns on number 8 and number 9, the front 2 teeth, and one of them broke like 3 months later, like broke off at the gum line. And this patient she was not a nice patient. And I was devastated for her because cosmetics were so important to her, and I felt terrible. She was ticked. Oh my goodness. So, I mean, I called the surgeon. I had a prosthodontist. I paid them to fix the problem. She had to have an implant. And when they took the tooth out, they said, it was fractured all the way down. There was nothing that I could have done. If I had a cone beam at the time, I would have known that. But, hindsight's always 2020. Anyway, but I'm walking through this and she's suing me for like $20,000, which is not what it costs to do the one implant. But yeah, I was devastated. And I mean, I just felt like I wasn't going to be able to survive this. And so I called the Arizona Dental Association and I said, is there somebody that's gone through this? And apparently there's a whole council that dentists supporting dentists. And this 91-year-old man who was running the council at the time met with me and talked to me off the ledge. And he said, this is what you do. Told me, call a lawyer, you have something written down, hand it to her and say, this is my best offer and it's final. And it worked. She signed it. It was over. It was over in like an hour. But that support was huge. And yeah, I think I can breathe again. And there was no malpractice. There's no board complaint. That will happen at some point in my life. It's inevitable. But I have a little more strength to go through it. You go through terrible things and then you get more strength.
So have you ever felt like the spotlight's too bright? Like when it comes to, maybe a first lecture that you did or the first time you found yourself on a bigger stage or like, I don't know. I feel like there is such I can do this, like so much self confidence and strength. But I don't know. That's just what I see. Like, is that always how it's been?
I'm going to say that when I get on the stage, I feel like what I'm doing is important. It isn't really about me as much. I mean, I want to do a good job and I do. I mean, I like the credentials and that makes me feel good, but it's not really about me. If I have the opportunity to tell somebody something that makes them feel better and not feel suicidal and not know that they're alone, then it's okay. It's okay if, somebody says something about my hair or that I'm fat today or, whatever, because I do feel like there's a couple people in that audience that I impacted. And that's what it's about. So I've kind of gotten over some of that. I'm still a girl. There's still things that bother me and I feel uncomfortable with, but this is my job. This is what I've been sent here to do. And I want to help people.
I think that's amazing because as I've researched like the highest performers in any industry, that's exactly what keeps them going and allows them to perform at their best is that their why, like the impact that they're making and who it's for, like transcends or is just more powerful than their own fears and awareness of where they might not be enough.
Because I'm not enough. I'm not, but my message is important. And I think it helps people.
Well, you are enough. You're not perfect.
I am not perfect. Oh, I really want to be, but I'm just not.
So in this journey, like where you're at, I don't know, there's probably some sense of fulfillment in it, but during this journey of the last, 15, 20 years, what mindset did you have to shed in order for you to be where you're at?
I think it's the same thing that all dentists, that isolation, that all these issues are just me. And some of them are, but most of them are just global. Everybody is dealing with this. Difficult patients that hate us for no reason, staff that's turning over, all of those things you feel like are about you. And some of it is a maturing for you, but it's everyone. Everyone is dealing with something. What is it? Everyone has a story you don't know about, and you have to remember that when they walk in. When somebody's angry and yelling at you, a lot of times the story isn't even about you. It's something about them. So I try and remember that.
And I feel like you even take that into how you lead your team, with the habitudes that you do. I don't know. I'm just so inspired by the way that you do connect with your team. You do get that buy-in. I mean, the culture in your practice, it's like everyone would, like, they have your back.
They do. I have a phenomenal team. I would love to take all the credit for it, but I don't get to. I mean, the people that are there they're just phenomenal people. I was a terrible leader when I first started my practice because, no, I'd have not one business class in my entire life. I couldn't read a P&L. I didn't know how to bill insurance. I mean, I was a terrible leader. I would fire people. I would hire people. I would tell them to do something. I'd set expectations and not mention it to them. I mean, I was a terrible leader.
So you were probably like every other dentist that had no clue.
We have no training on this. So it took me a little while to look in the mirror and go, oh, this is my fault. This isn't them. This is me. And when I became a better leader, then all of a sudden they wanted to be good and they became good too. So that was a mirroring thing. And so whenever I discover there's a problem in my practice, I have to look in the mirror and go, okay, what is it that I'm doing? In fact, this happened to me yesterday. I noticed that the lab cases were not going well. Like the lab would send me something that I didn't want, or I'd have a case that didn't go right because something was wrong. And I would ask my assistant and she's like, no, we didn't write that on the lab slip. Okay, why? Oh, because it was just in my brain. I didn't mention it to her, who didn't mention it to the lab. So then I got back something that I didn't want. That was my fault. And the terrible thing is that she could read my mind most of the time, but not always. So what I learned is I made a system where I can take some of that out of my brain that I expect everyone else to know and write it down. And that it'll have to be modified and adapted. But a lot of times that's the problem. When something's happening, it's because I'm not communicating what it is that I need.
Well, that's what's so fascinating about you, Dr. House, is that on the personal level with, self-transformation, it's like you continue to level up and you're like committed to just continuing to make yourself better, everyone around you better. But then you also have such a unique perspective because you've been on, again, the Council of ADA. So you have an idea of where dentistry in a macro sense is going in some of its struggles. I'm curious to hear your perspective just on that. The whole idea of like be the change you want to see. In what ways do you think dentistry is changing over the next decade?
What I wanted when I joined the Arizona Dental Association in 2002, I wanted us to have a marketing campaign. And I wanted us to have a marketing campaign that made oral health important. And nobody wants to do that. But I still feel like that is the change that we need, that somehow patients need to understand and value what we do in a way that they don't right now. They don't understand that what we do is complicated. It's much more like building a house than just putting a nail in the wall. There's a lot more to it. And I really wish that we could do some kind of marketing, because I think that what we're dealing with in dentistry right now is we feel very undervalued. Our hygienists have asked for huge raises and they deserve it. I mean, they totally deserve it. Unfortunately, because of what insurance limits what we pay them, and we get paid less for a cleaning, a dental hygiene cleaning, than I pay for my hair. I mean, it's unreasonable. But that means that like they can't get a raise because the numbers don't work. So there's this devaluing of us financially, and I think that there's an entitlement situation with some patients that's hard for us. And I wish that would be what I would want. If I could change anything, it would be that patients understood what we do and the value that we bring to them.
I think that's really well put. And instead of saying we just need to educate them, I love that you're like, well, it's a marketing campaign. Like that's how you That's how
Well,
you
you've
educate.
taught me about branding and marketing. I've learned a ton from you too in this 4-year relationship. My practice has really grown because those are things that I didn't understand. I didn't go to business school. I just thought I'll do a really good job and everyone will like me and they'll give me good reviews, which they don't. They just send me cards and flowers, which is very nice, but there's no reviews. You're the one who taught me, oh, you need like a social media presence and you need to do all these things. So I've learned a lot. And again, I try and share that with other people.
So, in the spirit of honor, who in the industry would you honor as an innovator that you just like to again bring attention to their name or what they're doing?
I mean, Duke Ho is the first person that comes to mind. He's in Texas and he is currently the president of Texas, although he might have gone out last week. He's, yeah, he is really an innovator. He thinks outside the box and he was on the Council for Dental Practice with me. And unfortunately, because of our ages, both of us are in our late 40s, early 50s. There's no way that we can go on the board of trustees at the ADA. There's a huge opportunity for change there, and we do need some young blood there. But I don't have that kind of time in my schedule as a solo practitioner. I can't do it. He can't do it. Most young people can't do it. But he's an up and comer.
So, for someone that wants to get involved, would you recommend them? Like, are there paths to go straight at starting at the ADA, or do you recommend starting locally?
I think you can start anywhere. You learn. Locally is probably easier because it's nice to know people in your community. You get to know people around you. It's been wonderful to have somebody call when something goes wrong. I'll call Rob Rhoda, who's another innovator, and say, hey, there's a problem. Can you help me? Or Gary Jones. Or I mean, I have a whole community of people in Phoenix that I can call and ask questions. Michael Thompson. Oh my gosh, the list just goes on and on. So locally is important. I would probably start locally.
How did you get so connected to your local community? Like, is that through all of a sudden the letter, and next thing you know, you get introduced to this community of people that are advocates that are actually very high on executing and you know like is that because all of a sudden like you're surrounded by so many amazing people, and I don't feel like that's just a common thing. I think some people still kind of stay in their lane, and maybe that fits for them, but not for you.
I guess I've never stayed in my lane or colored within the lines, or I'm always doing something different. But yeah, I think I was on that new dentist committee. I asked 3 senior dentists to come and talk. I just asked questions and people kept answering or calling me or inviting me to do something. So yeah, I got to meet lots and lots of people. And I think sometimes we do paint this brush like, oh, they're just this huge, like Emily Latran. You and I both know her. She's lovely. She's this little tiny person, but she seems like this colossal thing that you couldn't talk to. But everyone is a person, everyone has a story. And once you get to the humanity of people, we're all very much alike.
What do you feel like is like a limiting belief that affects dentists probably in the first 5 or 10 years of practice?
You're not enough. I think we do a lot of that. And then I think we get beat down in a lot of ways. And then if you don't think that you don't have that imposter syndrome and you think that you're of all that, yeah, then you get smacked really hard with a lawsuit or something. So brings you down.
So in your growth journey, you are still like right at your prime. Like we're not talking about for bodybuilding or weightlifting,
No, there will be no more of that really.
but when it comes to influence, when it comes to impact, like you're going to be going probably for another, I don't know, 15, 20 years.
I'm 49. I'm thinking 15 years probably.
Okay. So in the next 15 years, what is a mindset that you believe that you're going to have to embrace to get to where you want to go, that maybe you're still either working on or I don't want to say struggling with, but still in the tension of implementing, or I don't know.
The reality is that most practices need to be group practices. Our equipment is getting so expensive to work by yourself, means that you have trouble with paying the bills. And so I really need to bring an associate in. And yet I watched my husband bring 4 associates in, and it's a lot of work, a lot of time. You can't just bring somebody in and just hand them a drill. It doesn't work that way. You've got to mentor them. And our young dentists need that. They desperately need mentoring. But for me to actually do that one-on-one in my office every day, that sounds scary. So I haven't done it yet.
Now, is that on like a model side, like where you'd like to know more of the specifics, or is that on the actual practicality of actually the energy to mentor, to be okay with mistakes and learning? Like which part of that do you feel like is going to be more of a
I'm
challenge?
actually okay with the mistakes and learning because, I mean, we've all been there. That's the way it is. It's the time and energy. I've I have all these other projects, as you've seen with the book, the podcast, the speaking, and so to bring in something else that's going to take my time and energy, that I'm concerned about, and I would hate to fail somebody.
Is there anything you're doing right now that you would like to bring attention to, or something that you're working on that you just like our listeners to know about? Although I don't think we've officially said that we have our podcast is called the Authentic Dentist Podcast.
I think of all the things, that's one of the things I'm most proud of is that podcast. We're very honest. We talk about lots of challenges that we have, and I think it helps people. And I've noticed that people who are not in dentistry learn a lot from it too. I have patients that are text me, "Oh, I really liked what you said the other day." Like, oh my God, I've got patients listening to this. But I do think it impacts people, and I'm hoping that it will live on.
If someone wants to get a hold of you to find out how they can either get involved or simply because they'd like to get your perspective on something, what's the best way for someone to reach you?
I mean, I want to say email, but the problem is that I upped my filter because after all the shutdowns with technology, I'm nervous about somebody emailing me. So probably text me.
What about just your Facebook page,
Oh yeah, you can get a hold of me on my Facebook page,
which is,
Allison House.
or is it House Dental?
There's House Dental too, but I don't check that one as much.
Okay.
My Allison House is the one I'm really active with.
All right. So this is a thing I'm always fascinated by. You graduate dental school at how old?
26.
Okay. So Allison of today is walking by Allison of 26. And you have one sentiment that you can express and share to her. What would that be?
I mean, just don't give up. Keep going. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. There was a lot of moments at 26 where I was like, this is not going to be okay. I don't know what I'm going to do next. Just persevere.
That is awesome. I love that it has to do with actually not giving up, because dentistry is just hard.
It's just hard. And I don't know if there's any other way to, I don't think there's any other way to practice. I think what we do is hard. There's a lot of pieces to it, and the humanity piece is really hard to deal with, and we're not taught that one. It's hard. And I think it's the greatest. It's, people don't like this when I say it, but it's a puzzle. Somebody would come with me with a puzzle, and when I finish the puzzle and put it all together, I'm so excited. It's just the most amazing feeling in the world that I did this. You love it. It functions. You look great. I'm so proud.
Well, Allison, I'm super excited about the book that you're working on right now.
We're working on.
Yeah. And I'm excited about that book that I think is also in you, or that course or whatever that is, all about how you can help someone find their voice. Because I think that was really transformative. You realizing, wow, I have a voice. I have the ability to change, to lead, to make an impact. And I don't think that's for everybody, but a young dentist that has a similar DNA, I think would get really empowered, because there's so many lessons you've learned along the way of when to speak, how to share your voice in a way that has more impact. And I think that would really, really greatly impact dentistry.
Thank you.
But I just want to say thank you for letting me interview you today. It's just been an honor. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, and be sure to follow so you never miss an episode. To learn more about what's going on in dentistry, check out innovationindentistry.com.